Hello everyone. Want to give you a little more upbeat video, a little different, but a lot of repetition in things that I've done in the past. I'm going to be giving a little slideshow here of some of my old family album pictures, a lot of which you have seen, and most all of them you will not know who they are. They're my grandparents, my parents, my cousins, and so on and so forth. And we even got a couple of my good buddy Dave in there. Before we get started on this, I want to just touch base really quickly on the last video. If you noticed on the last video that I changed the video description, I will no longer be answering comments because they're getting quite a few, and it takes me too long to type, as I've said so many times before. That video was my opinion on things that are going on in the world and so on and so forth, and we'll leave it at that. I don't mean to make negative videos, and I may be, upsetting a lot of people, and that's not meant that way. So we're going to try to go on a little more upbeat here, and we'll leave that video alone. And, if you got any comments, you're more than welcome to put them on that video, and I will definitely read all the comments. But I'm not answering any more on that video. I hope you understand that. And we'll move on now. What you're going to be seeing now is a short slideshow, and I'm going to overdub it with this audio track here that I'm making on the Tascam DR05 recorder. It's not going to be in step. Of course, that's impossible for me to do. So I'm not going to explain any of the pictures. What I will do, when I put these pictures in Movie Maker, if there's any that I think you may want to know who they are, I'll put down like my grandma or my cousin or this or that or whatever, and most of them will not be marked at all. It's just something to show you, and it's not very long. So to start out, I've shown this before. I was born in West Haven, Connecticut in 1943 on Forest Avenue. And that house is still standing on Google Earth. I've shown that before. And if you haven't already seen it on this slideshow, it should be coming up shortly. So grab yourself a nice popcorn, make some popcorn, make a nice hot cup of coffee, or if it's hot where you are, a nice cold Coke or root beer or birch beer or, or whatever you want, and sit back and enjoy the show. A lot of this, as I said, is repeats of things that I've done before. People seem to think that I can be given unlimited amounts of things that I have done in the past and talking about things that I've done in the past, and that is not possible. I would have to be 200 years old in order to have that much stuff in history to share with you. In my younger years, we were poor, of course, and so was my uncle and aunts and uncles. On my dad's side, my Uncle Ed was poor just like us, but they've done a little better throughout the years. And my dad and my uncle, as I said, were both landscape gardeners. So in the summertime, we did okay. They did okay. And in the wintertime, well, it was really tough. And, for us, especially on our side of the family, it was really, really tough. And my uncle, in the wintertime, used to make grave blankets, and they are wooden frames made out of lath, the same type of lath material that they put in walls of old houses when they plastered years ago. And he would put some chicken wire over the top, mound it up and then stick greenery in there, like pine, from pine trees, evergreens, and pine cones, and he'd paint the pine cones silver and put in some red, I don't know what they called it. It's like kind of like a sharp, or you get stuck with them. I can't remember. They look like a flower. He had a name for them. I don't remember what it was. My uncle was good at making those, and wreaths, Christmas wreaths. This was around Christmas time, of course, and these things were made. The wreaths were sold, and people bought them to hang on their front doors. And the grave blankets covered graves. For those of people, I don't think they do this anymore, haven't in years, decorated graves and so forth with the grave blankets. And my dad, who lived 50 miles away in the New London County, my uncle lived in North Haven, Connecticut, in New Haven County. At the time, my dad made grave blankets and wreaths also, but on a much smaller scale. And I used to go around as a kid trying to sell them. There wasn't very many houses because we lived in the country, so within walking distance, and sometimes my dad would take me around and would knock on the doors and take orders for Christmas wreaths. And my dad would also, I don't know how he contacted the people, but to sell grave blankets, he advertised, I guess, in the paper, in the New London Day at that time. It was a New London Evening Day. At that time, it was put out in the evening. Now the day paper is put out in the morning. It's an outrageous price, and the paper isn't worth a nickel right nowadays. But anyways, that's beside the point. When we lived in New Haven, my dad, for a short time, also made wreaths, and I'd walk around the streets of New Haven and Fairhaven, which is a part of New Haven, and knocking on doors and taking orders for wreaths. So, so that's how that came about. And I've also told you about when my dad worked for Copper's Coke, which is coke is a derivative of coal. It's a very light material, burns very quickly. And back in those days, there were still people heating their homes with coal, and still had a few of these places. And my father would go to Copper's Coke. He'd buy the coke by the pound, and he would sell it in 100-pound bags and mock it up to a fair price and deliver it and dump the coal. He'd put the 100-pound bag on his back and dump it down the chute. And I would be on the back of his truck. At that time, I was about 12 years old or so, 10 to 12 years old, maybe 14, somewhere in that area anyways, and help him out. So, I'm repeating myself. I know I am. You got to remember, as old as I am, there isn't a lot of exciting things that we've done years ago. We were poor, and a lot of people don't realize it. Some will. Majority of people nowadays never even heard of an outhouse, and believe me, we've had our share of outhouses. The last outhouse we had, and I mentioned this too before, is in 1957 or 8, when we lived not too far from the Fair Oaks School. And that house, if I haven't already showed the picture of it, when my father built that in 1955, was just beginning. A lot of yard work had to be done, a lot of construction had to be done, and those were the years that my dad did everything himself, and I helped him a little bit, whatever I could. and we went to school directly across the street. We just walked to school. It was very easy, and those were happy times, and they were rough times too. So in those years, of course, mostly when I moved to New Haven, there was a lot of theaters, and I mentioned this too. This is all repeating stuff that I've done before, and the only time you may think it's new is if you are a new viewer to my channel. So, other than that, you've heard all this before, and like I say, I hate repeating myself, but, there are people that I've gotten a few comments that want to hear the old days, and they don't want to hear depressing things and negative things, and I can't blame you. I do not blame you one bit. It is reality, and, and I'm not going to get on that subject, but, so we're trying to give a little more upbeat on this, and that's all there is to that. I have nothing going on here, so this is all I can do. So I elected to do a flapping video by way of audio and somewhat of a slideshow, and I'm not going to have enough pictures to cover all the flapping that I'm doing, so there's going to be some duplicates, and there'll be some other video pictures on this video here to kind of fill in. So it's not going to be related to the old days. There may be some scenery from New Hampshire or snapshots of other things. And that's not even related to the old days, maybe just a few years ago. But I got to fill in so I can cover the audio track. Otherwise, I'll just give you a blank screen. And the last thing I want to give you is my ugly kisser on this, on this video, folks. So that's all. That's the story there. You think you've seen enough of it? And I don't want to torture you anymore with this kisser. So I would say, I find myself, and I think a lot of you may be in the same boat. I don't know, but that you are living, my cousin always told me years ago, my cousin Rose, who passed on, I sure do miss her. She was a year younger than I am. She died at age 75, so she'd been dead about a year now. And she used to tell me, William, she used to call me William. William, you're living in the past. I like to reminisce in the past, and I like to think about the good times, and I think that you're losing out if you're not thinking about the good days. A lot of people feel, well, this is now and the past is gone, it's over with. Well, the past, unfortunately, is gone, but it should never be gone from your memory. You should always, the fond memories, the bad parts, you rather forget. And there was a lot of bad things that happened in school, it could have been worse, but, for me, and there was a lot of tough times when we were growing up, that like I said before, there were times we had to be on welfare, especially in the wintertime. We need city help. Back then, when I was living in New Haven and we were on welfare for a while there, and I had to help out in the city of New Haven, working for the city, shoveling walkways to clear the snow from the intersections so that the people can walk at the cross light, the crosswalk. And we didn't get paid for it. That was part of our earning of the to help with the welfare. In other words, because my father was very, very sick at that time. He was very frail, and so shortly before he died. When he died, we were living in New London, but before that, in 1960, we were living in New Haven, and yes, I had to work in, for the city to help pay for the welfare. You just didn't get it totally free. And there's times different things that we had to work for. It was tough work, especially breaking ice and stuff from the intersections and stuff. There was a crew of us guys doing it. That's the way things were. So, when I see people that throw money away on things that, it's stupid, like overpriced smartphones and things like that. They're ridiculous. I mean, you can get a good used car for that much. Well, you used to be able to, but not anymore. It's foolish, really, really dumb and foolish, and that's my opinion on it. So, we grew up poor, and that's the way it was. I remember going way back, but I was only a tiny little kid. We lived on, I think it was Front Street in New Haven. I was only a little tyke, and I remember my dad and mom telling me, and I don't remember how old I was. It had to have been in the late 1940s. I was born in 43. So in the late 1940s, we lived in Front Street, and the place got flooded out because it was right by the river, I guess the river in New Haven. I think Front Street was off of Grand Avenue. I'm not positive. That's one thing I miss about my cousin Rose, although she lived in North Haven at the time. My Uncle Ed's daughter, or my dad's brother's, daughter, and she used to tell me all about that stuff too. Naturally, she wasn't living there, but she took me down by there many, many, many years ago, probably about 30 years ago, 35 years ago. She drove me over there and showed me the house, where the house was. And we got flooded out and we had to move out of there. Furniture got ruined and everything else. I don't know whether it was a storm or a hurricane or something came through in those years. I don't remember. So it wasn't fun times. When we had to take rents, my parents had to take rents. They had to take rent the cheapest we could afford, and some of them were dumps. Let's face it, there was. It wasn't easy. When we lived in New Haven on 1272 State Street, that was okay. That was a good apartment. It was 4-family house in 1960. 59 and 60 we moved there, and that's where I started my getting into electronics. But before those years, we moved back and forth between New London and New Haven. So there's a lot of shifting back and forth. The biggest mistake my mom and dad ever made was to sell that house across from Fair Oak School, which he built in 1955, because when he sold that, we never ever could afford a house again. It was always rent, and rent receipts is all you had to show for it. So, but that's just the way it was. It was a mistake. And my mom really wanted us to move, and my dad didn't, because my sister and I were getting picked on at school, being bullied all the time. It wasn't a big deal, but my mom didn't like it. I'd come home with bruises because I'd get punched in the shoulder, and I got bruised a lot. A kid would hit me in the shoulder. I was only 75 pounds. I was a skinny weakling. And I would just I'd walk down the aisle and the kid would pound me in the shoulder, and I'd be, and he was about 125 pounds at least, I never did anything to any of them, but they just hated me. Some of them, I had a few bullies in school, and that's just it, and so when my mom saw that, she said, we're moving, and that's just the way it is. And it was a heartbreak, there was more landscape jobs, putting lawns in, which is what my mom and with my dad used to do, putting in lawns in New Haven than there is in New London. And when we moved back up to in New Haven again, we were closer to, of course, North Haven and my uncle, and my uncle and my dad got together and they did the jobs together. My uncle having a tractor and extra machinery that my dad didn't have any of that. So he was better equipped, and they worked together, and that's just it. So, there's good times, really, so when you don't want to always think about the bad times, but, when I think back on those days, and they're fond memories, even the bullying, if that's the worst that would happen nowadays in school, we got no problems at all, so, but that's just the way it was, and, so when I was in New Haven, of course, then I was in junior high. I was in Fairhaven Junior High School. I don't even think Fairhaven Junior High is there anymore. I don't know. Or it's called something else now. I don't really know. But things were different then, So what I liked about Fairhaven Junior High is the first time I experienced shop class. And we had shop class, which was the best part of going to a junior high school for me. We had sheet metal work, soldering, and working with galvanized sheet metal. We had plastic forming class. I didn't care too much for that, where you had sheets of plastic, different colors, some clear, some red, different colors that should melt over a hot plate and form them into different things. I didn't really want that. I didn't choose plastic class. Then we had woodwork, and that's what I really liked. And then we had machinery class, but that didn't last too long. None of these classes lasted too long, and you really didn't have too much of a choice. If there was an opening, you got it. And I loved those classes. I loved them, and then they seemed to have done away with them. And that was the end of that. I still have somewhere in the shop, probably in my shed, I know it's somewhere around, a paper napkin holder made out of 1/4-inch plywood that I cut out on a bandsaw or a scrolling saw in junior high, and I still have it somewhere. I remember it was varnished, and it looked like some kind of I don't know what kind of an animal it was. It had an animal shape to the two sides. It was a little thing, and I never did take a picture of it. Otherwise, I'd show it to you. No big deal. That's the only thing that I can remember that I did recover from class. When I was in grade school, we did simple things like painting a bottle and buying a screw-on watering, like a little cap that screws on with hundreds of little holes in it. So you made flower watering things, and you painted the bottle yourself. You bought the bottle. You get a certain kind of bottle, and you painted it in school, and you put the thing together. That was in grade school. Little things like that. But my biggest memories are the shop class that we did have. We did not have electronics, of course, which would have really been nice. And one thing I really liked also when I was in junior high is science. We had a science teacher, and I mentioned this before, Mr. Rosberg. I used to pick his brain all the time when I saw him anywhere, and I'd ask him about this and ask him about that. And we had a science thing one time about condensation, and I couldn't grasp it at the time. And he explained it to me, and I grasp it after that, the way it is with the temperature versus the outside of the container and the inside of the container. So, and he did electrical. He taught us on small engines, how engines run. I love science class. I hated math. I failed math. I mentioned this before. And history I wasn't too good on. There was a lot of things to remember, and one thing I hated is, I don't know if they did it in grade school or junior high at all, is book reports. I could never do them. I could not do them, so I was not too good in school. But like I say, I loved science and hands-on, working on things and doing that. So I think I've talked way too long. I notice I'm still recording here. So I think I've shared enough with you. I hope I didn't bore you too much with repetition, and also with the limited amount of pictures that I have. There's no way I could put the pictures up and narrate on the computer. I can do it with Windows Movie Maker, but the fan is making a lot of noise. I'd be waking my wife up, even though it's in the other room. The computer's in the other room, and she's at the other end of the house. Nonetheless, I talk a little loud. Otherwise, I'm whispering, and then the fan would be driving, being very irritating. So I'm out here in the car, believe it or not, with the DR05 sitting on the steering wheel and talking about a foot away from the microphone. So that's the story there. So I think I covered everything. I'm, like I said before, I'm putting random pictures up there, and some of the pictures I'll probably mark on there what they are or who they are and so on, but majority of them will not be, and a majority of the pictures will probably be scenery. So I think that's more pleasant to look at than to be looking at something that was dug up from a recent burial. Hey, you got to have a little sense of humor, such as it is, even though it may be morbid. But, I try, I try. Sometimes, I try to be too honest. I express my feelings. That's the way I am. I know that Hickory Hill there is going to unsubscribe. I'm sorry to hear that. It's just the way it is, the way things are. It's not, I try not to, but I couldn't think of anything else to do other than make another video of things that I've already explained 1,000 times before, like I'm doing now. So if there was a project, I'd be more than happy to put them on. There's no electronic videos. There's nothing going on. Today's is Tuesday morning. I got to do my brother's shopping today. I'm doing this before the bank opens. The bank is probably open by now. I don't have my cell phone handy. I got to turn it on and look at the clock, or I got to put the key in the ignition and look at the clock on the radio. So anyways, it's probably time to end this video. And believe me, if there is anything important, I will put it on. I'm still looking forward to going to Jewett City. Not Jewett City. Looking forward to going to the fairs, rather. The fairs. At least one of them, Brooklyn Fair, as I said, is the end of this month. And the Woodstock is the following weekend at the beginning of September. And we don't know about the ham auction, which is going to be taking place, as I said before, at the around Halloween time. So we'll see what happens. And don't worry, folks. I'm not going to scrap Uncle Dorkle immediately, and I'm giving that a lot of consideration. So, I got a couple of people that said don't do it. It might not happen, And one other thing I have to say, space reasons, it'll accomplish nothing if I gave it to Tommy, because Tommy's not going to do the skits. Only I could do that, and it doesn't accomplish anything because it's still taking up the same space, whether I have it or Tommy has it. So that's not going to happen. He's not interested in doing that. He does his own things. He enjoys participating in the skits, but as far as doing them, no, he's not into that.